What's going on? What's the word? It's a Bantu awakening, heard all over the world. What's going on? Yeah. Kimbo, Tata Nzambi and Mama Ndombe. I honor and I acknowledge the 7 archangels, the 4 creatures, the 42 judges of the kingdom of Zulu, our elevated Bakulu of the light, elevated healers of the light, elevated warriors and mercenaries of the light. All Kimbo belongs to them. Hallelujah. I tell you, family, welcome, first of all, YouTube, Facebook. Our elevated Bakulu of the light are back. Our ancestors have returned. And it is time for us to rise up, know who you are, and unite. Our discussion on today is, before slavery, we, the melanated people, went throughout this whole earth. Now, if you recall in the beginning, Tata Nzambi, after making man and woman, he said, allow them to have or give them dominion over the earth. All right. So, Nkosi, dream energy.
CME family, how is everyone feeling?
Awesome. Awesome. How are you, my brother?
I am gaining more alignment. I'll put it to you that way. It's interesting when, as the older we get, we actually can perfect the steps that we make every next day by having the history behind us. You can understand. So yeah, I find that in this time period, yeah, everything is coming together just as it should be. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all of you who have entered my life. It's been profound to, after certain sessions, have the kind of consciousness becoming aware of myself after we speak. So, and that I am eternally grateful. But to start off with addressing this, it's like what I feel our people are suffering from is it's an identity denial crisis. It's like we have a lot of stories, but we don't really have much truth from the Alkebulandian state of consciousness, right? We have so many fragmented stories. And I think in addressing the ill, the suffering, the sorrow that we feel for being a people that's displaced without a history, it positions you to have an attitude. So I think the attitude that we have is what we actually are working through. It's just our basic attitude. I look at what they start teaching us from grade school to be in allegiance to a country that we already know. I mean, think about it, man. I was in the 3rd or 4th grade when this particular scenario came up in my life. When I had to start saying the Pledge of Allegiance in the white schools that they had started busing us to, and that in the neighborhoods that our family started moving to for better money, right? And all of a sudden you're in a white neighborhood. Mm-hmm. I remember my embodiment, what I felt like, attempting to say that Pledge of Allegiance with the understanding of what status our people had in this country. The mental brainwash, the mental suffering, most of us don't experience it, but I felt the pains of these people trying to get me to say that Pledge of Allegiance, that I completely resisted. I did not do that. But from those very early ages, the influences of subjecting us to mental abuse, I call it, to fashion to push information into a person that's contrary to every aspect of themselves. So you look at now, you're getting up into the high schools, going through junior high school, and you're entering the world. You've got a greater understanding in the Western world of being a Philadelphian, of being a New Yorker, of being and then the different clubs, the different activities, sports, like a lot of these things I certainly would like to talk about too, like these competitive sports that they have us engaged in, that we find so much favor in, that I don't find favor in any of the things that I used to do with football, track, base. I look at all of these things very suspect these days based upon how I see them creating something else in us that further separates us from our people.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're dealing with a mental spell. It's a spell. Let's call it what it is. The indoctrination process, the words that they use are incantations. We repeat these things over and over and over again.
Mm.
But the fact of the matter is we're not originally from the Americas. We're not originally from Europe. We're not originally from the Caribbean. And just like what was alluded to before we started to record, we have our ancestors who they've passed on. They've become Nkulus, Ivan Van Sertima and Runoko Rashidi. When you look, and please investigate their work, they've written a lot of books, and there's a lot of information, but this is the fundamental information. This is what we actually need to know. I would say over even most of what is in that Bible. If we understand that there's two men that we know of who traveled the spans of the earth seeking for evidence of African people before there was any other civilization of people in Europe and Asia and the Americas, and they found that evidence. That evidence is here. That evidence is known. And they even had, like Ivan Van Sertima actually had the ability and the opportunity to actually speak with some of the popes during his time and some of the hierarchies and politics who felt the energy of the stories that were being told about our people. But the mainstream in itself has a way of constantly making sure that we are in a caste system. It's not what it seems to be. In the Americas, we're not citizens, we're caste. When you look at a caste system, it said we are on the lower echelon. They've taught everyone in the entire world to step on us, to look at us as the lowest people on the planet. And that would only be the greatest people would fall from such a high position to this position that we're in. And that's something that we must understand. We're here through a punishment. We're being a stiff-necked people. And we're exhibiting stiff-necked behavior by resisting acknowledgement that we are from Alkebulan and not from the Americas. That is the ultimate stiff-neck move, to deny your heritage and to deny where we came from. When we began by denying Tata Nzambi's words.
Yes.
Right. So this is where we are. So we're working through this evidence. We bring up evidence to show it. And then we just have to contend with the ignorance that's within us and the willingness to also be a part of the puppets. I mean, to be a puppet in the in the control, greed, kill, maim, rape game of the European.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love the way you started that off and the way you even finished it. Because we know who the Bible says the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And we know who the enemy is because they live up to that. Brenda and I were discussing this morning, and that scripture came up. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I looked at her and I said, and they still kill. Still kill, right?
Yep.
And she kind of laughed. She said, pun intended. Yes. Steal, kill, and destroy. Now, as you had eloquently put it, that we have been indoctrinated to believe one thing. We all know that the victor is the one that writes history. They write what they want history to say. But there comes along those who know how history was. And that truth must come out. The victor will do their best to cover the truth. They will do their best to keep it subdued. And that's what they have done to us as a melanated people. They have kept us subdued, but yet they fed us what they wanted us to have. Why? Because they're the victor. So what they have said was, you were brought over from Africa as slaves. Yes, there were some that was here before slavery, but those who were here, they were not Africans. They were indigenous to this land. So this is what they have put out, and some of our brothers and sisters have gravitated to that. They put out that Africans don't like us because, they even say that Africans sold us. Now, we as a people, being under their power, former power, being under their indoctrination, we got angry because we couldn't believe that our people would sell us. And so because of that, then we have something against Africans. And we say, I have no part of them. So we disassociate ourselves from them and say we are not connected to them. We never were connected to them. I don't like them. This is what the victor wants. Separation, division, because the victor knows if we connect and ever connect and come together, the power will return with us.
Yeah, they're done.
So let us attack this. Let us break the lies of the victor and let us bring forth the truth. The original man was created in Africa. Yes, Nkosi energy.
I just wanted to touch again, as you're saying, it's important, I feel, to stress what you're speaking on, like the attitude that we're under. It's like we're under a mental attitude that we don't understand how the attitude was formed, but we're going on expressing the emotions behind the mindset. We need to go and understand what the mindset, how we got into this mindset. Continue, brother.
You're right. And we got into that mindset because of those who were in power, who the victor is no other way I could put it. We being amongst them, living amongst them all these hundreds of years, we have taken on their customs, their ways, their schooling, their education. You laid it out. And
more than we would like to admit, we've inherited their ways of being, way more than what we understand.
Yes, way more than we want to admit. But I have heard my brothers and sisters say, I am proud to be an American. I love this land. I would die for this land. I'll never leave America. And it's not because, of them saying, I don't like Africans or I am indigenous to this land. It's just simply because they feel that they have accomplished something, that they have arrived here in America, and this is all they know. So they love this land. This is where I was born. But when you truly get down to the nitty gritty of it and see what has been done to you, how these evil entities have stripped you from who you truly are. Now, watch this one. These evil entities, they have said that people from Africa, they are animalistic. Their behavior, is very cavemanish. They are they man eaters. They're head hunters. They'll cut your head off. It's all negative what they say. Now, again, this is from the evil entities. And because they put that out there, we, as melanated people, being over here, don't want to associate ourselves with Africa. We don't even want to go to Africa because of what they have put in our minds, thinking that they still live in huts.
The mental attitude.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Mother Bantu.
Well, when I was growing up, I was sad all the time. And when I think about it, and I'm going to tell you the reason why I was sad. We had a happy household. My father and mother, they were instrumental in cheering us up and making us happy. And we sang a lot in the house. My dad played the piano. He was a jazz artist, so forth and so on. But the reason why that I was sad all the time as a little girl, because everywhere I turned, I was nothing. You couldn't look at TV where you hear, unless you saw us being put down, called names, how white people treated us, even in a cartoon. I used to tell my mother, I used to ask my mother and father, why does everyone hate us? And they didn't really have an answer that satisfied me, but I remember growing up thinking back. I often think back to my childhood. I was a very sad girl. I was sad inside because it looked like to me that everyone that was white was happy. They were getting things. They were doing this. And even when we studied and looked at pictures of Africa, they made sure that we saw the worst pictures there was of Africa. Right?
Yes.
We were dancing around, we were rolling on the ground, we were dirty, we were stinky. But this was a part of the plan to break the chosen children. But as you grow up, and Elder Dream said, we are stiff-necked people. But what makes me happy now, I don't think about my children, my relatives, the ones that's still in church. I don't think about them not coming over to the
You're
truth.
going
Because he said there's a time for dailies, a certain time to rule, covered. So truth is being uncovered, lies are being exposed, because this is the time. This is the timing. And nothing is happening by happenstance right now. Tata Nzambi is revealing who his children are.
Yes.
And even though the Modeli, the Europeans, are fighting for their power and to keep their power, it's nothing they can do about it. Because it's time for him, his power, to be stripped from him. The last shall be what? First. The first shall be last. And I keep telling myself that. It's time for us who was put on the bottom partly because of our stiff neck and our disobedience, and he told us not to do something, we did it anyway. But this is the time where there's a transition going on the earth, where we are regaining our position on the earth.
Yes.
My great-grandchildren will know their position on the earth, because their position on the earth will be manifested before our eyes. And our enemies will be destroyed before our eyes. So we're in a transitioning state right now. And we can see it in the news. We can see it in the wars. We can see it on the Europeans trying to invent stuff. And
you're going in and out.
And
it's
and the food, because they really think that. But going on the earth, children, the black man will rule the planet again.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. And Kosi Silverback, yes, sir.
Well, you mentioned it. You mentioned, well, you all actually mentioned a few of them. But I think the most detrimental institution that really kept our people in this delusion is I'm gonna look for a word, but what kept our people further in slavery after the physical slavery was academia, right? Because you have to remember, many of our people had issues. When Malcolm came, he was even though the problem was that because he was Islam, he was in the nation of Islam, but nonetheless, as he progressively grew in knowledge, he was trying to point our people back to where we are from. Okay? And then, and if you look at his lineage, he had a father and mother who were under a leader, Marcus Garvey, who was getting people again back to go home. Okay? So Baba Mungu did have his prophets who came along to remind our people, right? Even though they came violently, Nat Turner or, even him, it was, he understood that our people don't belong here, we are under oppression, and we have to do something about it. Now, I point out academia because when I woke up with this understanding, it was around that time when Dr. Leonard Jeffrey, Dr. Benjamin Yochanan, and all those scholars like Ivan Van Sadema. But these people were under attack. So when these people came and tried to bring forth evidence, they were suppressed through the media, through the most of these people didn't, they didn't have their tenure as far as scholars. These people they suffered. Okay, they suffered. So we cannot leave out the aspect of academia because these people started a long time ago doing Cecil Rhodes. Okay, the Cecil Rhodes scholar. These people understood earlier on that this physical battle thing we're gonna lose if we continue. Okay, because they looked at history and they realized, that John Horses, the rebellions that took place in slavery, there were so many rebellions. Okay, so that we need to look at that. If you want to understand how they kept our people oppressed, they knew that the physical battle they would eventually lose because we outnumbered them. Here on the America, and back home. Okay, so they had to subscribe and utilize education to further continue crippling, brainwashing our people with these with their program of education. Because at the end of the day, it's really education. Now, education, you may look at it, it's physical, but it's very spiritual. Okay, because if I can take away your child from your house and then bringing them somewhere else, your child is going to worship their God. Your child is not going to worship your God.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yes, Matondo. Nkosi energy. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to, touch on what both you and Kosi Silverback just mentioned from the standpoint, like you mentioned, how we have formed this mindset, a lot of our people over this side, that America is number one, America is the best, we love America. Because there is an opposite to everything. When we make this claim about how we love and stand for America, we're also saying that we do not stand for Africa and that we do not love Africa. And that's something that we must understand on the spiritual level. We're condemning ourselves against the country of our forefathers and foremothers. Mm-hmm. And we're giving credence to a country because to me, I've never had a presence of place in my life. I remember in the third grade, it was being discussed after we'd heard some classroom commentary about being a communist or an allegiance to the America, right?
Yes.
And I remember on recess, me and some white kids was talking about it with black kids, and this was my second year in a white school. And so we were developing camaraderies and friendships where we're talking things over with the cool white kids that ain't calling us niggers, right? So with these children, us as children, we're talking these things over. And I remember all the kids was like, they were all in allegiance to America. And I looked at them like, man, I don't even know what a communist is, but I'm not. Because anything that's not like what America is, that's what I am. My brain, some of us from a young age understand whether or not we fully get what happened. We understand that America is not what it's cracked up to be, just simply by being able to use critical thinking as a youth to see that the stories they tell based upon the stories in my household, something's not right about the country, right? Mm-hmm. So when we align ourselves with this country on an energetic level, we are denying our ancestors. We're denying the rites of passage that we can have when we keep holding on to this allegiance to the Americas.
Yes.
If you have allegiance to America, this is what you have an allegiance to. You have an allegiance to a country that murders, that rapes, mm-hmm. that steals, mm-hmm. that lies, mm-hmm. that propagandizes to unbelievably so, and continues that pattern forever and ever and ever mm-hmm. and ever.
Yes.
And when I hear our people make these claims about loving the West and the Americas and hating Africa and they could never live there, I know it's out of ignorance, but I know that person doesn't understand on a spiritual level what they're actually doing. It's just not words you're saying. It's just way deeper, way deeper. You're sealing a fate on a spiritual level that you're going to have to answer for. It's important that we understand. It's like the attitudes. We are people of attitude. Mm-hmm. We must adjust our attitudes. This shifting of the attitude has to do with, I'm glad that Nkosi Nzambi and Zola and NT Brenda brought that teaching forward. NT Brenda on the aspects of Muntu, right?
Yes.
And how on the spiritual level, how we're manifesting ourselves and recovering this energetics. And then you start teaching, and then that teaching you did on the divine laws of nature, right? Mm-hmm. I just have to go back and refresh my memory on them when you guys brought it up, because it had been probably 20 years or over, which is where all my problems started. And I was able to draw that conclusion right away. You know, I moved here and I stopped teaching. I was teaching yoga and teaching classes where I could keep my spiritual connection to myself connected to Tata and Kalunga at the time I didn't know the name of. But, you know, I wasn't making a lot of money teaching the classes, so I thought I would go get a job doing construction where I could make the money, right? Well, I did do that, but I lost my grip spiritually. Started doing this work where the men I'm hanging out with are speaking on this low vibrational level, right? If a woman passed by, there's soliciting commentary. If there's any like hierarchy of consciousness is completely thwarted or avoided, and so it's just this dumb talk all day long, just dumb talk, and 6 to 8 hours of it. Then I may have some beers with him after work, and I wake up and I do that same thing the next day for a year or two or three or four. Well, what I'm not recognizing is I'm shifting based upon the position I put myself in. So it's subtle. It's on a very subtle level how we can lose connection to our spirituality. And for those of us that are building it in the Americas, obtaining it separate from a religion is even harder when we don't adjust our mental attitude. For me to make sure that I know, my understanding is that I do not know nothing, a claim that I can make every day, but I'm willing to be filled, gives me the opportunity to learn something in the day. However, if I wake up with the information and set in that attitude where I know it, well, what am I going to gain in that day? And I think we have too much of a I know it attitude in the Americas based upon all this false information that we have. What I've learned about what I know in the Americas is that I don't know anything. If I'm using just Western knowledge, I'm dumb as a punk, and a punk is a piece of wood, right? I'm dumb as a punk, as a piece of wood, a dry piece of wood. Their knowledge leaves us in that very state. We look like we have form. We appear to be saying things that matter, but it's just dry wood talk. There's nothing wet. There's no living essence to it.
Yeah, baseless. Matondo. Nkosikangi.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say is for our brothers and sisters that are in America that think that they're indigenous to America, you have to think about this. Even the scientists of the Mzungu and the Mudeli, the European scientists have admitted the oldest man and woman were found on the continent of Africa, Kebilon. So if that's the case, you might have been born in America, in the land of your captivity, by the way. But if you keep going back, you check your DNA. If you were to check your DNA and you go back far enough, you might have had ancestors that were here when the Europeans first came and said that you were indigenous here. But if you keep going back, we've been here hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years on the earth. If you keep going back far enough, your DNA lands in Africa. So that makes you African, an African. It's like the one doctor, I was looking at the video the other day, that said, it is what it is. Whether you want to admit it or not, you're African. And so for you to say that you're indigenous to America, you got to go back further than that. Your history goes back further than that with your DNA. The other thing is, it was Croce Silverback had said, America has done nothing but stole, killed, raped, lied. Well, now we're in the age of Aquarius. The universe is now bringing that karmic energy back. So if you want to keep staying here in America, you're going to catch all of this karma, this bad energy that they put out there, because it's coming back to America now. The destruction, the judgment that's coming here is what they put out. So now it's time to come back. So it would be wise, behoove you to really start to look and to search and to begin to understand that you are African. And that's going to be your safe place in this near future. So that's what I have to say on that.
Beautiful.
That you're speaking of is a law of cause and effect. You're absolutely right. There is about to be a return on the behavior that they've been dishing out to the world.
Mm-hmm. Mother Bantu. You're muted. You're muted.
I just wanted to piggyback on what my younger brother Energy said. It's going to come through teaching. You know, you and Brenda and so many others have excellent teaching online. You might not know today, but that doesn't mean you're not going to find Jonathan Chilumbo tomorrow.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? He knows how to get his children to the place that we need to be and who we need to be under to listen to. He will remove the scales off of our eyes. He will remove the scales off of my son's eyes, my grandchildren's eyes. He will remove the scales off of the eyes whose spirit is seeking truth.
Yes.
I don't care what's coming out of your mouth. Your spirit is seeking truth, understanding, righteousness. That's your spirit churning. And when I was growing up, I always would look at pictures of African kings and queens, and I just thought they were beautiful people. The Africans that I worked with, and in my on my job, they were lovely people. They were funny. We had a good relationship with them. So he always gave me the desire of my ancestors to come back home to Africa. Even though my family would say, Africa, what do you want to go to Africa for? Because of the propaganda that was coming to America about Africa, they made Africa seem to us Americans that it was an awful place to even want to go to. But he gave me that desire to come home to Africa from the time I was 35. And I remember praying one time, and I said, I would like to be in Africa on my 70th birthday. That was my prayer. Wow. I got here to Africa 2 weeks after I turned 70, only because I missed the flight. But here's the thing. The DNA that we all hold as African people calls us in our sleep. Our ancestors calls us in our sleep. You can say today, oh, I'll never leave America. And the ancestors say something to you in the middle of the night and whisper to you, it's time to come home. Your whole dynamic thought process begin to change.
Mm-hmm.
He will leave no child behind. I don't care what you say. And you talk out the side of your neck if you want to. And cry anymore about, oh, I wish my children wake up. I wish my friends would wake up. That's his business. Mm-hmm. That's one way or the other, we will have that desire inside of us to come home.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I was one of those ones that thought America was great. Why did I think America was great? Not because of what Americans done to us. I didn't think that was the great part of America. I just like to drive around America. Go on my excursions, drive. It was always so beautiful. I was always worshiping the trees, the mountains, the skies, all of this stuff. I love the land that he made. Mm-hmm. And so my children tell me right now, my son told me, Mom, you were the first one in the family that moved to Africa. He said, do you realize that your whole bloodline will eventually follow you?
Wow.
Now that's coming from someone that I'm thinking, How is he going to wake up? Because he's all over the place.
Yeah.
But he declared, he didn't even know what he said.
Mm-hmm.
He declared and decreed that my whole bloodline will eventually follow you to Africa. He said, Mom, you're the free. Or whatever we believe today, whatever we understand today, can be changed in the twinkling of an eye. Yes. There's always a Nzambi, Brenda, Jonathan, someone on in this atmosphere that's going on right now is teaching truth. And people are finding truth.
I say, yes, ma'am. Yes.
I just wanted to say, CME, everybody, that just adding on to what Brother Energy stated, there's also that law of reciprocity, or the law of compensation. There's many names for it. Reaping and sowing is what they call it in Christianity. What you put out in the universe, it comes back to you. So they have put out a lot of evil, a lot of negative things that they have done. So all of that is going to come back on them. We was talking the other night, and I said they really don't know what they have wrought upon their heads for all the evil that they have done, not only to us Muntu, but other people as well, other ethnicities as well. Some of them they have wiped out. And then not only that, the universe. They have created so many different things that are causing so much devastation in Mama Earth. And that is why she's moaning and groaning too. And they're going to reap all of that. It's going to come back to them. That's the universal law. So what you put out, it comes back to you. And another thing too, piggybacking on what Mama Bantu said, you know, I have said for years, I used to say it all the time. I don't say it as much now, still on my journey. When I look back from the time, about maybe 11 years ago, we awakened and started this journey, 11, 12, 13, 14, 56, about 11, 12 years ago. Because our son was like 4 or 5 when we left the church, and he's 18 now. So yeah, it's been quite some time, longer than that. But I said it was a journey for me. And I look back over those years, and I look now where I am today, and I'm not where I was even 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm at a different point in my life. I have seen growth, and we need to understand that it's just that. Like she was saying, it's a journey. She said, you may be thinking one way today, but it may be different tomorrow. These not her words verbatim, but basically that's what Mama Bantu was saying, and she's right, because this is a journey. You may understand one way, and you may get another revelation that's a higher revelation tomorrow, next week, next year, and you're on a different path now. You're on a higher path now, and that is what it's about. We're supposed to be ascending, growing in wisdom, in knowledge, becoming that God.
Exactly. You know, it is so. It's true. You know, that we are to be ascending, and this is what we are trying to let our brothers and sisters know. Okay. When you look at, and going back to what our topic, you know, is about, when you look at in Genesis, where the Most High created man is, and said that he took man and placed him in the garden, it spoke about the river, the one river that flowed out from the garden and formed 4 rivers. It named the Euphrates River, and it named a river that encompassed the whole of Ethiopia. So when you look at that, it literally tells you where it is. It's in Africa. Now, yes, we did have ancestors that left out of Africa and went into other parts of the world. Remember, the Most High gave us dominion over the earth so that men go out and inhabit it. Go out and claim it. It's yours. I gave it to you. But you started in Africa. That is your beginning. But these entities, as I said earlier, they came up with all of this nonsense to cause separation, to break up families. Look at it, my brothers and sisters. There was never borders in Africa. There was never Cameroonian. There was never Zimbabwean. There was never Nigerian. Okay? Etc. We were all one people moving freely throughout the continent. But when they came in, they started slicing and dicing it up. Go ahead.
You made me think of something. You and Brother Randall, because Brother Randall was talking about the DNA. And when you check your DNA, it's going to show that your origin is of African origin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing some research one time, and I had saw where so many different ethnicities of Africa that had a haplogroup of L. It was a very ancient haplogroup.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the majority of African Americans have this haplogroup as well. And so many ethnic groups on the continent. I was looking at this, I'm like, when you look at this, the DNA in the haplogroup, we did come from all of us did come from a common origin ancestor in Africa. Even though we have all these different ethnic groups in Africa today, there was a common origin. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at this book a couple of weeks ago talking about the origin of man. Mm-hmm. And I've heard this before. I don't know how true it is. I'm just saying I've heard this. I keep hearing this. So it has to have some truth behind it, how the origin of the African man came from the pygmy. Mm-hmm. From the pygmy, you have different types of group. I saw the Masaba. From the Masaba, you have the Negro. And then it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 different groups that came out from the pygmies. And then from them came other groups. And it's just morphed and changed. Mm-hmm. And I've heard some other people say this, and I've read it several times. And like I said, how true it is, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it keeps surfacing up. Mm-hmm. So it pays to look into that and dig into it. And I said that to say it goes back apparently to a common ancestor, a common origin of the African man. Mm-hmm.
Yes. You know, when we truly look at it, and I see your hand, Nkosi, when we truly look at this and really think about this, again, it is a common DNA, okay, a common ancestry. And that ancestry is African. We come from Africa. And it was Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, who thoroughly did his research, and in Nkosi Dream Energy had mentioned him earlier. People may be asking the question, well, how is it that, you know, there are things here in America that we found, you know, that show we're from this indigenous to this land, you know, like certain writings or even pyramids and all this stuff. He said, Dr. Sertima said that when Columbus it didn't. Now the thing is that he didn't actually step foot onto America, but it said that where he arrived, he saw Indians, and amongst the Indians there were two very tall African men that looked just like the ones back on the continent of Africa. There were artifacts that were found in America that have African, that are African, look exactly like what they saw in Africa. So our ancestors came into America and other areas across the earth. And Kosi, Dream Energy.
Yes, yes. What you're speaking of is those gold-tipped spears that they recognized were from Africa, that they saw also in the West Indies. They saw them in the Americas. And yeah, we had been here, but also Van Sertima and Kulu, Ivan Van Sertima.
Yes.
Also speaks about the three currents that leave Africa that take you directly to either the Caribbean, the Americas, and other parts of the earth. If you get, because his father was a fisherman, right? What did he say his father was? Yes, he was all on waters, right? Mm-hmm. And so he understood currents because he grew up on the water and in the bush.
Yes.
And his father's profession gave him way more understanding about how currents work. Mm-hmm. What I'd heard, I'm pretty sure I'd heard in Kulu, John Henry Clark say the same thing, but he mentioned two currents, and Ivan Van Sertima introduces a third current, but they're currents. So how did we get from Africa? We didn't have to chart a course. We didn't have to sit down, scratch your head, and go, well, let's see, I want to land in the Carolinas. No, the current, if you put a craft on that current takes you naturally to these places in America. And the Americas takes you naturally there. And those currents flow twice a year from Africa, and they still do this very same thing today. Yes. So that's how we were able to populate the earth, is through getting onto a current in a vessel, and that current simply took you where you. So that means once that was understood, you know the amount of gold that could have been in all of those ships coming to the Americas, which we know had to have happened. We know that Mansa Musa and his brother, they had so much gold, and when his brother left and came to he never returned. And we have stories that where we understand that he was dropping gold off at every one of these islands. It came with the people. And this is what as we get deeper into understanding what Christopher Columbus's journeys really were about, they were not about the discovery of land. It was about finding the gold of Mansa Musa and his brothers. That's what the real chart of his travels was about. It wasn't about nothing else. You have to remember, this is what they don't teach us, so we don't know it. Mm-hmm. If Europe had not invaded Africa starting 1482 first, if they had not invaded, I'm certain that the European people would not have been able to go another 5 years without that culture of people dying. They were war ravaged. They were sickly. They were disease ridden. You understand? They were going down as a people. Yes. And they understood because Christopher Columbus's fathers and his family were boat makers and cartographers. Cartographers are map makers. Mm-hmm. They understood. They saw that huge image. Well, actually, it was one of Columbus's uncles that did the drawing of Mansa Musa with that big gold nugget in the center, right? They knew, they charted his territories, right? They knew the routes that he had gone. Mm-hmm. And that's what they set out for. So we have to be very, very, expand our mental aptitude to understand the trickery that is going down. And then as I wrap up in this set, when Auntie Brenda mentioned the pygmies, they're called the Twa. And if you can, Obati-Shaka's work, he is probably right now the only man who actually has gone in and done the research. And just before I got hip to Bantu, I was following his work. You know, I kind of let off for the past 2 years since I've been delving into the Bantu thing. But he has this video that's called his name again is Oba Tashaka, OBA Tashaka, and the name of the video is the Twa, the first people, or something like that. And yeah, we Bantu come from the Twa. But yeah, it's very interesting work, and I found it hard not to. And this is the thing about our history is that it is long. Yeah. You can't crunch all of the information into our history into a 2,000-year fake framework. We have to be looking more at least a 500,000, over 1,000,000 years old. I'm certain that it's longer than that. But so as you look at the timeline of our people, all of the events that unfolded, but they didn't unfold in 2,000 years. And so you can understand that when the Europeans came upon the shores of Africa during the 1400s, they saw people that were no longer warring. They saw people that was living in a peace that they didn't understand. They saw people that was communicating unlike something they'd ever seen before. Because if you look at the foundations, the stepping stones of a civilization, I would say, a civilized people, in the beginnings, you're going to have the turmoil. It's called growing pains. It's just like when we have children, we watch our children go through growing pains. Every 3 to 6 months. We're watching as their limbs lengthen. They have the soreness around the elbows and knees, the hips, the spine, where they're growing, right? Well, if you see, and whatever happens in nature naturally happens fundamentally in nature on a macro scale. So if the being goes through growing pains, well, the culture, its people are going to be going through the growing pains. So we'd already gone through warring amongst ourselves. We'd already gone through bloodletting. We'd already done those things by the time they came upon us. And we were living in a way in which they could not understand, to the point of them having to decivilize us because our civilized ways were so much higher than theirs. They had to actually create a story to take us down from the heights of the civilizations of people we were. They created a fake civilized people because they could never live like we live. They don't have the melanated magnetics for that. It's all about melanin.
Yes. And go see Silverback. You're muted.
Yeah, so you know, it's very, very true what the elders what you're all saying is very, very true. I kind of lost my train of thought actually. There was something that Mama Brenda had said that when you were saying that they don't know what they know exactly what's coming. See that and this is the thing. This is the thing that our people sometimes we go out of the way try to educate these people, try to give them the benefit of the doubt. No. These demonic entities believe that they're gonna win at the end. They truly believe that. They believe that they're going to win. They're under a very, very powerful delusion. They believe that Satan is right in his stance, that Satan came to free them, he came to give them knowledge. Yes, he did. He came to give them false knowledge. Okay? But these entities believe that they're going to overcome, that they believe that they're going to escape the wrath of the Most High. Now, according to now in regards to our Yaya said a few minutes ago about our ancestor Dr. Ben Sadama, you can imagine he could have easily just went along with what everyone was saying. Okay, he wanted to know what's the connection between the West Indies to Africa. Okay, from Guyana all the way to South Africa. Him being someone who he could have easily just said like most of the Ghanese people, the Chinese Indians will go over there. No, we're not African. There's no connection. And he went along with that premise. You know, what would we have today as a people? So we have to listen to our scholars today, most of these scholars, their work, really, if you think about it, if you really think about it, family, these people, their contribution academically, it was really in the 90s, because all those years, 60s, 40s, 50s, all the way to the 19 in the 80s, they weren't acknowledged. It was around the time when Malcolm X movie came around in the 90s, when these people who've been fighting for the um, psychological oppression that most of our people are still suffering. Most of these people here, they didn't want to listen to. I can remember I was telling my brother about Dr. Van Yakinen, early 2000s. This guy didn't want to hear it. Who was that? He didn't want to hear anything. So our people, they didn't even want to hear our scholars to this today. They don't want to hear about our scholars. So if they don't want to hear about scholars, it's going to be very hard to convince them about our spirituality, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But his contribution was in the own right. You know, he went as far as really finding out the connection between Africa and the West Indies, and he came across these giant heads, you know, and you know, we can see that we have people, even in Mexico, we have our people. So there goes to it goes to tell you that these people that you call Mexicans, they're not really the real people. They're not the original land.
No, they're
you
not.
know?
Nope.
And the further he digged, he realized, yeah, our people, like Mama, you were saying earlier that the pygmies, yes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we have connection. I have connections with pygmies. You know, they're genetically, they're a whole different, you know, scientific. If they open them up, you know, these people are very, very strong. So these little Mexicans that you see over there in Mexico, yeah, they have a connection back home.
Mama Brenda. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna say you all was talking about the somebody had mentioned about the pyramids. I think that was you.
Mm-hmm.
And the pyramids are all over, but because like you said earlier, and many of you all have stated that our people went all over because, you know, in the Bible it says that we were given dominion over the earth, meaning that we rule the earth. We have been here millions of years in comparison to 6,000 to 10,000 years when their scientists say that they came about. And you know, we was looking at earlier, I told you I found some information where they were looking at the DNA, you know, and we have heard they call him the Cheddar Man, which was not a white man that they found in Europe, a very ancient bone. He was a black man. They try to change up the image, of course, because they want to hide the fact that we, melanated man, was the original man on earth. They had that old book that I showed you and told you how what I just mentioned, they said came from the pygmies, which was the name like Brother Energy mentioned gave to them, which is a negative connotation that they have attributed to the original name of the original man. And they in that book they said they called him the red man,
yes,
of the earth.
Yes.
And so, and don't the Bible say that the first man was what? Adama. And Adama, when you look at Adama, the word, it means what? Red.
Red.
And
Yes.
when you look up red, they try to say, because they want to try to take away from the fact that we are the original man. They want to say, oh, we're red. But when you really actually look at it, and remember we did this teaching on a red, they're talking about brown. In Africa, when you hear them say red, it's a brownish hue to it. Like when you look at my skin color here, that's considered red right there.
Yes,
so
red,
like the red cow, you look at it, there's a red squirrel and it's brown, but they call it the red squirrel, the red cow. They got a red duck, they got the red fox. And when you look at these animals, they're not that color that they're trying to say what they are red. They are a brownish with a reddish undertone to it. And so they were referred to as the red man of the earth. So put two and two together. So they even have pyramids in China. And we know that the original man in China was a melanated man. Philippines, melanated man. Japan, melanated man. America's melanated man. You keep going, we're all over.
All over.
That's why it's key that we know our history, because we have to rewrite history in its correct form so that our children can know the truth and not grow up with the lies that we grew up in. Our ancestors, many of our ancestors, our grandmothers and great grandmothers grew up listening to take away. I was looking at how I think it was in Ghana when a group of Europeans went over there looking at the building of their housing during, I think it was like the 1800s, late 1800s or something like that, around that time frame. And it was a certain pattern that was in there. Okay. And they said, because we didn't know our history, it's this white man, this European, they attributed to him creating or discovering, that's their word, discover.
That word.
But discover this when this was all over Africa.
Yeah.
So they said because we don't know our history, they can come up and say, oh, we discovered this. So it's critical that we know our history. Why did our ancestors write things down on rocks, in caves, in papyrus, on papyrus? Because they wanted us to know certain things. And so it is critical. It's critical that we learn our history. It's critical that we go back and research. Yes, we get downloads. Yes, our ancestors will come and speak to us in our dreams as well. But it's critical that we are some intelligent beings.
Come on. Yeah.
Okay. Very intelligent. Our ancestors, how did they learn about nature? How did they learn about the stars, all the elements in the sky? That's because they studied and researched. We too from them.
Yes.
So we should do wise.
Yeah.
History. Look at our history, what they have stripped from us and taken it back. Taking it back.
There you go. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're not trying. That's what we're going to do.
Not trying.
Okay?
We're doing.
We're doing it. We're
We are doing.
Yes. In Nkosi energy and then Mother Bantu.
Okay, cool. So yes, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that Auntie Brenda mentioned. So glasses. Right. So if you're talking about like the original people of South America, right? Again, we look at travels, we see the European man not entering into those areas until the late 1400s, right? Christopher Columbus, another guy who I think sailed before him. Now, they were already dark-skinned people in these areas. So all of you Dominican Republicans, all you Mexicans, all of you Cubanos, all of you Brasileiros, all you Brazilians, everyone down there, you need to understand the influence of the people of white skin tone color that have come in and shifted your dark skin to more light skin tone. We were there first.
Yes.
Our people were there first for hundreds of thousands of years. You understand? Hundreds of thousands of years before these Europeans came. You know, these old mech heads that they're finding, the size of these things, how long do you think it would take to make just one of those heads, weighing what, 50 tons, 5 tons? I mean, the sculpting that would go into place, how long do you think it would take just to make one of those? And they keep unearthing these things. The other thing is, we have to remember also, before the days of Peleg, the earth was whole, right? During the days of Peleg, the earth was split. It went through the different continental phases that we see today. But during the age before the days of Peleg, anyone could traverse from Africa to anywhere on this continent. So we had two ways of moving across the earth. Before the days of Peleg, before the earth was scattered, I mean, broken apart, we could have traveled anywhere. And then, and I'm certain during that time, those same currents were bringing us over as well. So there were two ways that we were able to embody or inhabit the planet. And it's so important that we understand this. My people, what I'm saying, all of us of dark skin, I understand your fascination for the Americas and let's just say, yeah, we built America, and I can understand the pride behind wanting to support something that our people did. But you must understand that there are lands that will fall during what's coming, the redemption of us, right? Lands will fall, areas, and the lands that won't fall happen to be located in Imbo, right? Not in the Americas. The choice is fully yours. We are simply here to present enough information for you. Do the homework. Just don't listen. That's part of our problem.
Exactly.
We just hear people talk and we don't go do no research.
No.
I give names. I give information for you to go and do the research, because if you don't do the research, it's like my father taught me when I was very young. He could easily have given me definitions to words that he was using that I didn't understand. And it didn't matter how simple the word was. He would always direct me to the dictionary, always. He never left it upon my own recognizance for him to think that I understand it. Get to the dictionary, you define it, you will never forget it when you do it in that way. That's the purposeful when we mention any names, write the name down, and when the video finishes, go do the research. Don't wait for the next day, because you're gonna, these old foul spirits are gonna enter in and have you chasing some other thing that doesn't matter. Stay with the point of inspiration when it hits you. Take the names down, do the research, develop your critical thinking processes.
Exactly. But Brother Energy, organized religion has caused our people to not utilize their critical thinking skills.
Right.
When you look at the dogma that they teach in Christianity, now that our eyes are open and we are able to, because they go by faith. Oh, it's faith. But when you look at things and you see so many discrepancies in there, I'm just going to give this one example. There's many examples in there. Yes. You have a particular passage in the Bible they talk about where it says that the Christ came only for the lost sheep of the house of Isolele. Only came for Isolele. But then you have a passage that say he died for the whole world. Which is it?
Exactly.
Which is it? Did he come for one particular group, or did he die for the world? Which is it? But see, they don't use their critical thinking skills and say, wait a minute now, why is it different? Now, I'm gonna tell you, I was different in church. I asked questions, things just didn't make sense to me.
I did the same.
Yeah, and I would ask questions. But I want to say this: when I was working in a hospital some years ago, I had this patient in the hospital. Her husband was a Mexican from Mexico. I don't remember how we got on this conversation, because this was some years ago. I remember though him telling me that, oh, they're black Indians on the edge of Mexico. We know they're there. They always been there. This was a Mexican. He was telling me this. He said, yeah, we know it's black Indians there. They always been there on the edge of Mexico. So they know. They know that our people were there. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, he proved so many ways, from linguistic to archaeology, so many different ways he proved, not just a spear, it's linguistics over here. It's even with foods and different things. He proved how they were from Africa. Now, look at the fact that the oldest bones that they have found on the face of the earth is on the continent of Africa. It's not in the Americas. And not only this, when you look at, they say things in a way to be to try to hide things. They speak in codes. I was reading this article this morning, and I was telling Nzambi, I said, because they say how I had started to say this and got off track, how the Europeans, how they was looking at the Proto-Indo-European language and where it came from, right? And they were saying that they did some research on it and traced it all the way back to the hunter-gatherers that came from the East. And I told Nzambi, I said, whenever you see the East or Near East, they're talking about Africa. I said, but they say things in a way to try to hide things, because they know, like, Brother Energy was saying, if you don't study and research, you won't know. You be like, well, what is the East? What is the Near East? You won't know what they're talking about. And that they do that deliberately to throw people off, so people won't know. What they're saying is these people were black that came into Europe. They were melanated people that left Africa and came into Europe.
Celebrated by the Europeans. That make sure you accentuate that they were celebrated back in that time by the Europeans.
Yes. And so they said that they came from the Fertile Crescent. And so again, if you don't research, you won't know what the Fertile Crescent is. We know the Fertile Crescent is over there by the Nile Valley where our people live. They went up and down the Nile Valley, all up and down around Africa. They followed the water. So when they said the Fertile Crescent, that's where they said the first man came from as well. That's Africa.
Fertile Crescent is not here in the United States.
So if I have researched these things, read to know these things, I would be clueless as to them saying in so many words that this language and these people came from Africa. Ago, we know that the who they call the so-called leprechauns were the Twa people.
Hello.
Because they were the Twa people. It's documented. And yes, they killed them off. Just like what they do. Man, Nzambi said they come to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what they do. When our people, look at what the melanated man did when he came. He brought knowledge. We brought knowledge. We brought education. We enhanced. We didn't tear down. We didn't kill. We didn't take over nobody's land. We never done those things. Exactly. And I told Nzambi, I said, you can tell that these, and I'm almost finished. You can tell that these people are poor people because they're so fixated on stealing and taking to the extent that they kill people, stealing land, stealing people resources. And there's so much resource in the world. You don't have to kill nobody. You don't have to steal from nobody. It's enough to where nobody should have to be poor. But because of their greed,
you go, bingo.
Their greed, they want it all for themselves to the extent now they are over there killing for land again. That's all what's happening, people. It's political. We was talking about the Middle East as well and how that term came about. They said in the 1900s. That term Middle East came about. And I told Nzambi, I said, it is a geopolitical term. It's political. That was created by Europeans, because that whole part, all of that was Africa. What they call Israel, some said Palestine, that was part of Egypt. That's Africa.
Yeah.
That's Africa. Yeah. All is our land. All that what they're fighting over. And they want sub-Sahara Africa. They want the whole. They got the northern part. But they want the whole. They will never get it. Never. Never.
Right. Yeah. Mother Bantu. Yeah. I'm sorry. Mother Bantu.
I forgot what I was going to say.
It'll come back, Mama.
I keep a little pad. I noted that.
I wanted to make a comment on this. And then I want to make a comment on that. So I will say this. When I found out that the African man, woman, and child had been on the earth for millions of years, it changed my dynamic. Because a European told us that the earth is only 6,000 years old, and so they lied about that. So when I realized, okay, so we've been here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I believe when Tata Nzambi and Mama Nobe put us here, they put us here with wisdom, knowledge, supernatural strengths. We could go from one place to the other physically. We could lift things that was impossible to lift. We had supernatural powers, supernatural wisdom, supernatural intelligence. and like Mama Brenda said, she told me not to call her Mama Brenda, but she said that we had knowledge that we gave out freely.
Yes.
Everyone came to us for knowledge because Tata Nzambi gave us scientific knowledge, astrological knowledge, mathematical knowledge. We were genius people made in his image.
Oh yes.
We were geniuses.
Still are.
But we took that genius and gave it to others. They came from around the world to come to Egypt to learn. Greeks, this one, that one. But here's the thing: we traveled around this planet how many times? Setting up camp, building, beautifying, and moving on. So for people to find our artifacts is because we have been here so long on the earth for so long.
Yeah.
Hello.
We had enough time to build. They still can't understand how those Sphinx in Egypt and all around the world. Impossible for a man to lift in their own strength.
Frequency.
It was a frequency. They could pick something up and levitate up and put it down. White man don't understand that we were geniuses. From the beginning, we were genius. We were made in his image, and we were geniuses. And we replenished the earth. We went around the earth. We traveled here. We gave. We weren't
so much.
We never went into anyone else's land and took over.
Never
killed, robbed, destroyed. Never did anything.
Never.
Even today, we're like our Father. We're kind people, loving people. We would rather give somebody the shirt off our back if we see them cold or hungry, because we're like our mother and father. So the first thing that we have to understand and learn is how old the African man, woman, and child is. That cuts the conversation right then and there.
Yes.
Because what I told my sons, I said, do you know that Africans been on the earth for thousands, millions of years? They go, wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow. They don't hear that. No one teaches them that. So we're not only renewing our mind, but the fact is that we will, of course, take over the planet again, because
it's happening.
The earth is crying for the redemption of the children, for the children to be restored back into their rightful place, so that the earth can begin to replenish itself again and not be destroyed by the entities that's destroying the earth now. They call it global warming, but the earth is groaning
Yes, ma'am.
for the redemption of the children of Tata Nzambi. And that's one of the things I wanted to say, so I'll stop there.
Real quick, and then we're going to go to...
You see all this information that's given out? Do you know how many thousands of people are going to see this eventually? Maybe not tomorrow, maybe next year. But the truth is going out through the net, through the airwaves, and people are going to catch it, grab it, and say, wait a minute, what is this? What is this understanding? Because it's going to agree with their spirit. It's going to agree with their DNA. They're going to understand. So that's what I
beautiful.
So now with what you said real quick, and then we go to next is Brother Randall. Now, knowing from what Mother Bantu said, that the knowledge that our ancestors had and that was passed down from generation to generation, now we understand. Now we see and we know why it was why they told us so many lies about our history, our culture, our spirituality, because of the power. The power that we possess with this knowledge. And they did not want us to they said knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And they did not want us to have this knowledge of who we are, because your mind, when you understand what they really call God is, when you really begin to understand what this God is, that's why he's everywhere. That the creator is everywhere. How is the creator everywhere? When you, I'm not tell you, but when you have revelation, no, how is everywhere
Y'all got it.
for certain time.
Y'all got
Man, just think about, and then knowing all about the different laws that we are learning. See, they don't want this. They don't want us to know, so they lied and they told us it was demonic, it was evil, said our ancestors were demonic, and if you see them in your dreams, that's not them, they're devils, because they know the power behind it. But yet, like Mama Bantu said, they went into Africa. I read where it says Heraclitus sat on the steps of the temple, waiting, wanting so bad to come in and learn from my ancestors. And I told Nzambi, and I said, and they took, because they didn't tell them everything. And they didn't write these things down because they know how detrimental it could be in the wrong hands. These demons turned around, and when they got this knowledge, they wrote it down, and they lied and said that they burned the libraries. And if you read, you will see where they said, oh, nobody went in there and learned or understood the hieroglyph except for one. And I think that was Pythagoras, I think they said. I said, us in school, and I'm almost finished, they taught us about Socrates, Aristotle, and all these so-called philosophical thinkers, and told us that they created the music and the geometry and all these different things. I said, but they failed. Now we know this, but they failed to say this. All these so-called philosophical thinkers, they went to Kemet and learned all this information and brought it back to Greece. And their leaders said, this is foreign to us. What you bring in is not ours. And they killed majority of these people for bringing this knowledge. So how can you claim something when these people were killed, or either they were placed in isolation on islands and died for bringing something that was foreign to them? Can it be Greece created all these things when their people said this is foreign? See, they don't touch that.
Okay, I'm gonna stop Mama Brenda so nobody else will forget what they gotta say.
I want to say one more. I would say one more thing. What crazy people go through the world blowing off the nose of statues, trying to change the identity of the African people? They just blow off the nose. That's
we knew. We knew we were. Yeah,
we'll never know if we blow off the nose.
Who was that, Tamara?
Tamara. Give it that nose. That African nose. Let's blow it up.
We know who did that.
Liars.
We know who did.
Yeah.
I thought about that song, Lies. But it's not lies. I'm saying lies. It's life.
Yeah. Nkosi Kangi. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I remember one time watching this documentary, and they supposedly had one of the top archaeologists and Egyptologists were talking about our ancestors. And this is what they said. This is how they mix their words. He says, we can admit that the ancient Egyptian pharaohs were black-skinned with African features, but we cannot admit that they're African. How stupid does that sound?
Oh.
You know?
Did they call them dark-skinned white people?
And then the other thing, our ancestors were so advanced and so in tune with nature. I believe that they could communicate with the entities of nature. Like, say, if they needed to travel, they could work with like the Simbis. I know Silverback, Brother Silverback, you from it. They could call on the Simbis of the wind, and they could shift the trade winds in their benefit, so they could sail. They could call down fire like our ancestral.
They still doing that over there in Africa. They're still doing that in Africa. We heard a story real quick about someone whose brother moved over into Tanzania, and they went to Zanzibar looking for this building real quick. And they went, our people use this energy and the power for negative things. That doesn't mean it's negative because they're using it negatively. It's just that their heart is evil, so they're using it for evil. So know that. So, and this is a story that I'm going to tell you where it was used for something that probably wasn't right when we heard it. And when they walked into this area looking for this building, they couldn't find it. This man took them into the alleyway, and they saw these Africans over there in Tanzania doing something, a ritual or something. They said people were levitating, floating in the air, eyes rolling back. And they said they got afraid. And they start backing off out of that area. When they backed off and went back, the building that they was looking for, they passed right by it. The building was not there when they passed by it at first, though. So what happened to the building?
Yeah.
So it's still done, on the continent. So we just don't hear of these things, because it's not advertised. Just like it happened to be advertised. Remember that man, that Nganga over in Kikongo, that was speaking to the water, and the water was moving back and coming forth, and the mama that was controlling the whirlwind with her finger. We have dominion over this earth.
We are a supernatural people. We are a supernatural people.
Yes, I told Nzambi
by our mother and our father.
Exactly.
Our mother and our father.
And we are returning back to this, and that's, my dear, is what they're so afraid of.
Yes, because when we tap into our powers, they are finished.
It's over. And we even had the ability to communicate with the animals. You never heard any incidents of our people on the continent being mauled by lions.
No.
Never.
We got along and respected each other.
Yes. Yes, we did. Nkosi energy, and then Nkosi silverback Ongo.
on that note, talking about these magical things that we know our people do, when Obotachaka, Dr. Obotachaka, when he's teaching on the Twa, that's one thing he highlights mostly, is that the Twa people did magic, bro. I mean, very things we're talking about, they were the first ones. They could levitate, themselves, transpose themselves. They were the first of the ones who were doing this kind of work, and so this is something that, again, when we first started talking, we were talking about actually before, when Nkosi Kanga mentioned how putting the pain relieving spray together, how it worked. At some part of my path, I began to, I think it was when I was first picking up the teachings on traditional Chinese medicine. It awakened in me the elements, right? Because when you start looking into traditional Chinese medicine, it's more elemental work, right? We're just looking at the fundamental principles of the universe in play. And so I started to just work with those things. I taught my children how to address the weather and to address events and that have to do with naturalness like them by using an example. I would say that if you want to speak to the wind because you have wind in yourself, you speak to yourself outside of yourself. If you want to address things that are outside of yourself in nature, you recognize that you are the embodiment of it. You are made from the very same things. And in that way, there is not the separation, right? We don't have to conjure up some kind of a faith or belief that something's going to work when I simply ask for what's happening around me to perform in the way in which I need, being cognizant of what needs to be, what needs other people have that need to be met. An example I'll give, I think on my daughter's 9th birthday, she'd come from California here. And so she understood how I talk to the nature and things around it. So on her birthday, you know, I bought this kind of bubble machine thing. We were blowing bubbles, and I mean, it was just amazing. We had the whole beach park come over and join us, right? Just a bubble affair. And all of a sudden the wind started blowing. And after about 10 seconds, my daughter she got very sad, you know, and all the kids kind of started to disperse. She said, Papa, the wind's blowing. I said, so what are you going to do? She says, what do you mean? I said, you remember what I taught you, right? She said, well, what? I said, so what is the wind? She said, well, I have air in me. I said, so what's outside of you? What's blowing your bubbles away right now? She said, the wind. I said, well, ask yourself politely and say why you want it to happen. And so she said, well, I don't know what I would say, though, Papa. I said, well, I'll tell you how I would say it, but you have to say it in your own words. I said, so I would just say, when, since you're a part of me and I'm a part of you, can you just for a moment, while me and my friends are here, can you just stop blowing for a while? And, you know, once we're bored and we don't want to blow bubbles anymore, you can go back to blowing. And so I said it. I said, but you got to say it in your own way. She said her statement. As soon as she finished her words, the wind stopped. Soon, yeah, the wind stopped. They played, and as soon as they were done, the wind began again. Now, on that same weekend, we were traveling another 100 miles. So I was in the south. I was going up north where I'd first taken her when she come the first time when she came at 6, and to some friends that she knew there. So we traveling north now. And by the time we get up there, it's a beautiful day. I see the clouds sticking out. I know by noontime it's going to be raining. I don't say any of this to her. We pull up, we start setting up. The group of people start coming in. And again, this nice sunny day. We've got everything laid out. And just as some of the people start arriving, the clouds move in and the rain starts. And I just looked at her. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to see what her response was going to be, what her reaction was going to be. So she didn't react. She responded to me. She said, Papa, now we got the wind this time. I say, no, we didn't. You did that. I said, so what are you going to do? She says, but it's raining. She says, is it different with rain? I said, well, you have water inside of you, right? I said, so it takes two things for rain to happen. You need clouds. So winds are moved by clouds, and you need water. I said, just speak to those very same elements in yourself and ask outside of yourself for these elements to do what you're asking. And she did so, and the rain didn't stop right away, right? It took about 2 minutes before it stopped. So when when the wind abated, when she first did her decree, she thought the elements were going to behave the same. So she kind of got a little, in other words, she started to kind of not trust that it was going to happen. And I didn't say anything. I didn't open my mouth. I knew it was going to happen because I'd been doing it before her. And so, you know, about within the 2 minutes, the rain stopped, and I had, and in her declaration, she said the same thing. When we're done having our fun, you can come back. So about 2 hours after the rain stopped, we had 2 hours. And after people started, the first couple of people that started to leave, clouds came back in and the rain started and we all left. But these are things that we're not taught by our parents in the Americas. We aren't taught that these are things that we can do because religion has us in a mindset that these are things that are of the devil for us to communicate with elements. But we have to, our basic understanding is, and I'm pretty sure this is how the Twa and the people on the continent that are doing what they do today are doing these things. It's the understanding that we're not separate from what we see in the skies or on the ground. We are synergistically, symbiotically in tuned with those things. They are not separate from us. So we have the abilities. I mean, there are things that we can do, but we have to clear is the doubt and fear. Doubt and fear are based in religions and in the education of their system. Everything they teach is coming from the aspect of fear. It's not including things. So we have to strip. And that's what had happened to me. I'd been here. I started in California. I bought this book titled Of Water and Spirit by a brother named Maladomi Some. It's a beautiful book of water and spirit. And he was talking about how he was taken. He was born in the year of my sister, 1964. So this story he was telling happened like before 1970. And when you start reading this book, he doesn't reveal this until almost midway in the book. You think that this is something that happened like 400 years ago, the way the French still takes black boys out of Africa, takes them to these places and turns them into these European gophers, right? But his story was told, and in one of the stories, he talked about the underground people, the spirits, and he talked about how we use ash and circles to protect ourselves. Like if you want to do a prayer, you're doing rituals, we circle ourselves in ash, it keeps evil spirits out. I still do things like that. Talked about how we use salt. But one of the things he talked about, how the magic, the medicine, the wonderment of our people. Like we're not, as long as we hold on to the values of the West, we can never be empowered as Africans.
There you go. There you go.
And that's intended. They intend for us to remain in ignorance so that they can maintain their dominance over us. Because as we rise up to who we are, they come down. As we go up, they're coming down. And we see that because so many of us are awakening now. And I told Nzambi, I said, watch 2024, we're going to see so many people awakening. So many people awakening. Just watch. Right. I said 2024. I said it's going to be a ride. It's going to be an interesting ride for us to see. Yes. So, and we was talking about Mama Doris mentioned about the key, and you had mentioned about how we're connected. I remember I did the teaching on Muntu, the force. So I said that they teach in Christianity he's omniscient. I can't even say the word. Omniscient, omnipotent, and omniscient.
Omniscient.
Okay.
Omniscient.
So he's the creator is everywhere in everything. And the four and two mean the Kintu, the Muntu, the Hantu, and the Kuntu. How it's in everything. And we're all connected to it. And so that is why we can tap into it and speak, because we're connected to it. Once you tap into it, and you're talking about the fear that they present and throw out onto people, they know that those are very low vibration, very low frequencies, and they want to keep people in a low vibrational state, because you really can't do much in a low vibrational state. So that's why they have people to be fearful, depressive state, can't pay bills, afraid, and all these things. You're on a low vibrational state. And we have to arise above those things so that we can elevate our frequency, because you can do more when your frequency is on a higher level. That's we're energy beings. Our heart pumps from electricity. We're electrical beings.
Yeah. Electromagnetic. Yes, we are.
We go see Silverback Congo. Yes, sir.
Yeah, wonderful. I want to piggyback off Elder Dream, what he mentioned about speaking to the nature. I have, in many occasions, I've never said it before actually, but in many occasions I have spoken to the rain, not rain till I got to work, or till I got to whatever, to my destination. And it does happen, But if you tell somebody that, they'll say, that's just, that's right. They won't, it's a disconnect, right? I mean, if you're not accustomed to hugging a tree or talking to a tree, talking to your food, if you're not accustomed to that, if you haven't been doing that, that's a disconnect, right? Yes. So they will have you think that, okay, the only time you can talk to your food is when you pray for it, so you can eat it. The only time you can kill an animal is when you're about to eat it, right? The only time. So all these habits come from people who come from scarcity, people who come from a place where there is no connection, right?
Yes. Right.
But I do have a question. But before I say that, so it's like, if you look at, there's a lot of rituals in the Bible. There's so many rituals, right? Mm-hmm. There's a time when Messiah was called and he spoke to the pigs. He got them to run over the mountain. They fell over. And there's times when he spoke to the water. There's times when he spoke to the trees, so that because they didn't give him food. There is times when Elijah spoke to the fire to come down from Zulu down to earth. these are the things that we just, as a people, we don't seem to understand that these are, to us, it's natural. Okay? I'm going to give you actually a recent one. These things are happening, yes, it's very true. Those things are happening back home, but to specific people, okay, who are practicing these things. When these things are ours, this is our. The only way you can worship the Father is when you acknowledge these principles. Okay, so the way, and I keep saying it all the time, what you do on a daily basis, how you worship the Father. This on the day, so basically everything you're doing every day, you worship the Father. But if these people have programmed you to believe that you need to go work, you need to go, celebrate the holidays, and to do all the things that they do is what they do. Where you people come from? We need to be asking these people consistently, where you people come from? Because you're the troublemakers of the world. The world's in trouble because of you people. So where do you come from?
The pits of hell.
They quickly tell me where I'm from, where the first person is. I don't want to hear you tell me something that belongs to me. You tell me where you come from.